Hey everyone, welcome to Civic Engagement and Climate Justice, Pillar 1, Direct Service. My name is Abby and I'm going to be your facilitator. And I am going to bring up my screen here. So, obviously, we're in Pillar 1, Direct Service. Welcome. Expectations for behavior. I know that this isn't a recorded webinar where the participants are here. I forgot to click on record when I was in Zoom with them for the first one, so I am going over this myself. But in just cohesion with the rest of the webinars, I'm going over the expectations for behavior. And I have 3 of them. First one is actively listen. Take turns when speaking and give space for others to have their time to talk. This means actively participating and engaging, but also engaging in the way that you can just listen to others when they want to express their ideas or ask questions. 2, recognize strength and diversity. Understand each community member's strengths through their diverse experiences. So although you might come from a different background or have a different faith or whatever, or view on something, that does not mean that we are not able to work together. I actually find that as a strength, that we have diversity, we can recognize that and respect it. And that brings us to 3, on our commonalities. The ties that bind us are greater than the spaces that divide us. We all have the same goal. Obviously, we have a very polarized society at this time. And I would just like to highlight the fact that we are fighting for the same thing here, climate justice, and we are all going to be affected by it regardless of where we come from. So here's a brief presentation overview. 1, facilitator introduction. So I will more formally introduce myself. 2, what is civic engagement, definition and examples. 3, climate justice 101. 4, direct service, definition and examples. 5, your turn, reflect, share, and brainstorm. And I will be going over some of the questions that were asked during this webinar because I know I did not record them. 6, nonprofit opportunities. What nonprofits can you get involved with in order to, be of direct service? So just a little bit about me. My name is Abby. I come from Michigan. I come from the land of the Big Lakes, and I grew up in both peninsulas of Michigan, the upper and the lower peninsula. My home is near Lake Michigan, but my family comes from the upper peninsula area, and so I spent a lot of time along the shores of Lake Superior and the Keweenaw Peninsula, which is quite beautiful. And we are very lucky that we have that much water. Now I live in Denver, where there's not such an abundance of water. And that's kind of just where I'm coming from now. So why I volunteer? I have always been in the outdoors. I am a passionate outdoors woman, and I've spent most of my time outdoors, not indoors. And the Great Lakes, like after coming from the Great Lakes to Denver, it really shocked me to see how much water is so important here in terms of just management. The Great Lakes doesn't truly have as much management as far as I know in terms of its fresh water. I mean, we are very lucky there. And it was very important for me when I came here to explore the themes that water has here, such as water rights or indigenous rights. What are my communities? So a community that I am a part of, clearly I'm from Michigan, but I'm also indigenous Sami, which is, I explain it best to others saying that I'm a reindeer herder descendant. So that means I'm from my family, my extended ancestors are from the Arctic Circle. And although they contribute the least to climate change, they're the ones who are most affected by it. And that brings me to climate justice because of my family, because of my heritage, because of all of these things together, and the fact that it is just so important now to focus on these things before it's too late. So, civic engagement. So I have a quote here, it's quite long, from Civic Responsibility in Higher Education, but I thought that it would be a good quote. Civic engagement is when a morally and civically responsible individual recognizes himself or herself as a member of a larger social fabric and therefore considers social problems to be at least partly his or her own. Such an individual is willing to see the moral and civic dimensions of issues, to make and justify informed moral and civic judgments, and to take action when appropriate. In simpler terms, active participation of citizens within their community to address public concerns. So I have a couple of examples of civic engagement, actually quite a few. Obviously, the big one is voting, but what else? Volunteering and membership with a nonprofit or group. This means regular volunteering and membership, showing up to meetings, being consistent, being an active member of a nonprofit or a group. Fundraising, that's definitely one, or donating, which I didn't include in this slide, but we go over that next week in philanthropy. And then petitioning and canvassing, contacting elected officials about issues you're concerned about, climate justice, writing letters to your local newspaper, so letters to the editor. And I just thought that this next slide and the quote on it were more appropriate. Climate Justice 101. The earth is the mother of all people, and all people should have equal rights upon it. And that is by Hinma Tuya Latkikt, as far as I'm able to pronounce it, and I apologize if I didn't pronounce it right. He's also known as Chief Joseph of the Nez Perce tribe. And below that, I have a face of a Native woman that says on it, I am the change, climate justice, pollution, earth, CO2, air. And I just think that it's quite a beautiful image because she's also wearing very traditional garb. And I don't know, I just think it's really powerful because it's a real woman's face, and it's very intersectional with Native rights as well as, women's rights and just climate justice. It's so intersectional, which brings us to the main topic of today. So climate justice defined, well, it's recognition that environmental action is not strictly environmental, but a political, economical, and ethical issue as well. Each citizen has the right to breathe clean air, drink clean water, and have food and housing security from severe weather events. Advocacy and engagement help ensure this. And below that, I have a tree with hands of all different types and colors because, obviously for us to protect nature, we're protecting ourselves. But we have to be the ones to defend nature from ourselves. And it takes people of all different backgrounds and walks of life to address this. It is our duty to protect humankind as well as the planet. So, climate change is not equitable. Although we are all affected by climate change, there is a wide range of disparities between different social groups, including but not limited to socioeconomic class, race, gender identity, sexual orientation, and ability status. And I have a world that's built out of all of these different things. And basically, climate change is a social justice issue as well as a climate justice issue. Speaking of social justice, climate change and diversity, low income and historically underrepresented groups not only feel effects first, they also suffer the greatest. And I want to highlight some of these photos that I have, all of them that I have in this slide. And the first one I want to go over is the one on the left, which is a barrier island, and it's a resort island. These are expensive homes that are owned by wealthier people who can afford to have vacation homes or second homes here. And it was wiped out by a hurricane. And I think that maybe this was Florence. I'm not exactly, I can't exactly recall, but it's important to know that wealthy people get affected as well. And I mean, look at that, like almost all of those houses were knocked out. The second one is victims of Hurricane Katrina. They happen to be African American, and they're looking up at the helicopter with "Help" spray painted and waving the American flag. And we all kind of know about FEMA's delayed response with Katrina. I don't know if this is a FEMA helicopter, but regardless, there were a lot of victims because of the poverty associated with New Orleans. A lot of people are African American, and they were left in dire conditions that nobody really assisted with in time. And so this is a really powerful photo. The next one is a rice farmer in Asia, and he or she is just looking at what once was their rice field. It's all dried up. And I mean, it affects people of all different ethnicities all around the world. And then finally, it affects people with disabilities. And a lot of people don't know this, but there are a lot of people with disabilities who are affected by the heat. There's a lot of heat intolerance. A lot of people with MS happen to have, as an example. And people who have MS are really, really affected because their nervous systems can't really adapt or register the heat as well as able-bodied people can. And she's also in a wheelchair, and imagine having to evacuate while being in a wheelchair bound. So this is why climate justice is not just an environmental issue, but also a human rights issue. So, direct service. Intersectionality is important. This means working with individuals and nonprofits to address a myriad of social justice issues that interconnect with climate justice. All types of justice are important. In terms of climate change, I mean, yeah, volunteering is a way that you can give direct service, but that means volunteering and regularly showing up, regularly attending meetings that your nonprofit or your group that's focused on climate justice has. It means showing up to events and helping consistently and regularly. Social justice examples, well, actually I skipped over that, I apologize. So who do you show up for? I mentioned that the community that I am a part of is Native Sami. And a lot of my Finnish ancestry really revolves around nature. It is very important in our culture to be outside, and the way that it's affecting the northern countries in Europe and everywhere. But the reindeer herders, I mean, like, there's documentaries on them, and the Sami are losing their way of life. And it's very disheartening, and that's who I show up for. Social justice examples. So in terms of volunteering for a nonprofit, you can tie in the nonprofit's message with a social justice issue that they might specifically focus on. So a nonprofit that could be focusing on Native and tribal rights in terms of environmental protections. So that is very intersectional right there, but it also is focusing on a specific area of climate justice. Another example that I have here is healthcare accessibility and fracking. So a lot of people here in Colorado are struggling because of the increase in rental prices. It is just going through the roof, and it has been for some time. that means that a lot of people are not able to access healthcare. And especially when it comes to issues that kind of, I mean, we have a lot of smog out here. We're actually, I think, the 17th most smoggy city in the country right now. The ozone is really bad. We have a lot of ozone days. And then in Colorado right now, they're fighting against fracking because fracking has caused a lot of problems for people, specifically actually in Weld County. There's a documentary called Gasland that is based off of the experiences of residents in Weld County and their interactions with, well, not just interactions because they're always breathing in the polluted air from fracking, but their interactions with individuals from the oil and gas industry. It's really affecting a lot of people who also cannot afford the healthcare that they need for these new mysterious, supposedly, quote unquote, respiratory illnesses that they've been getting. There's a lot of new asthma cases, and it's kind of just suspicious that that's occurring in Weld County, where it's the most fracked county or one of the most in the nation. Direct service. So this is where you reflect, you share, and you brainstorm. So now it's your turn. Reflect and share on these questions. And when I held the webinar with people in attendance, I had them look at this. And so some of the questions were, who do you show up for? Meaning what groups and / or communities do you represent? So me and Michigan and Finnish, American, and Sami, those are my communities. What limits you from engaging in climate justice? So this is accessibility to fighting for climate justice action. Are there certain things in your life, like your work schedule, or having a family with young kids, or both, or school, or lack of transportation? Do those things prevent you from engaging in climate justice in the way that you would like? And finally, what ways are you able to access opportunities for climate justice? So I am not asking people here to do something outrageous and spend a lot of money, such as getting a bus pass in order to go to downtown Denver or wherever you are, and go downtown and spend a whole day there lobbying at the Capitol, which would be great. But like I was emphasizing earlier, that it's an inequitable issue. There's a lot of inequity here. And what ways are you able to access opportunities for climate justice? And I think it's best to start there, because when you realize your limitations as well as your realities, and what you can do, I think that's actually more reachable for people. When you are able to storytell, when you are able to tell how you have been affected by climate change and why you are in climate justice, the way that I shared about my family and my background, my heritage, and how it affects my family, and just my way of living by being outdoors all the time. Same thing. You are going to be more relatable if you are able to just tell your story and think of ways that are inexpensive, because there are many. Just showing up at a town hall and advocating, bringing up questions about climate justice, what you can do and what your community can do, that itself is enough. Or even attending meetings in your community with a nonprofit, but regularly, that's enough. So let's brainstorm. And I would like for you to share what ideas do you have to become involved, and then how can you expand your knowledge of social justice to fight climate change? So this is where I had a couple of participants, kind of tell me some of their answers to these questions. And there was a participant who said that she showed up for her granddaughter. It doesn't have to be a community, even it could be a family member. It's your friends, even, yourself. And I thought that was pretty impactful, because she said that she's worried about borrowing the earth from her granddaughter. And She wants to make it a better place. And I just thought that was so beautiful for her to say. And then what ideas do you have to become involved? I think I had someone answer that question as well. And it was just to start telling stories, which is something that I also emphasize. I would really, really encourage people to open up and tell their stories, because storytelling is the way that we navigate through the world, and your story is your truth. People cannot argue with your truth, because that is your story to tell. Like, that is your reality. And the ways that you have been affected by, someone brought up that they had been affected by fracking and they had respiratory issues. And I thought that was definitely an important story to tell. I have a lot of friends in Will County who have been complaining about respiratory illness. And asthma mysteriously comes out of nowhere for a lot of these individuals. And some of them have only lived there just a couple months when they got it. And then just to answer the question, how can you expand your knowledge of social justice to fight climate change? And honestly, I think, again, storytelling is going to expand your knowledge. I mean, attend meetings, show up for, the meetings, show up for yourself though, and show up and tell your story and tell other people, because that is going to spread the message. As long as you contact friends and family, even then, even if it's them, they will start to recognize where you are coming from in your personal, history, and they care about you and they want to know. And you'd be surprised. A lot of people are afraid to tell their story, but because people hide behind phones and their laptop screens now, I think it's even more actually appreciated by a lot of people if you just get into a conversation with a neighbor or someone at the store that you regularly go to, and just tell them, I'm wearing this button because I'm interested in climate justice, or I'm buying more, sustainable goods because I have X and X relationship with climate justice. So I just think that a lot of people are willing to listen. I tell my story a lot, and I can promise you that a lot of people will really actually appreciate it. Where to begin? So these are nonprofits that I highly suggest that people take a look into. So the first one is 350 Colorado. And the mission statement I have here is: the mission of 350 Colorado is to work locally to help build the global grassroots movement to solve the climate crisis and transition to a sustainable future. 350 Colorado has established itself as the largest Colorado-based grassroots network focused on taking action to stop climate change. They work to empower local communities with the tools and connections to create measurable change towards a sustainable future. And places where you can get involved. Honestly, social media is another great way to get involved. Add them on Facebook, follow them on Facebook, and they post a lot of events and, announcements and things that they are doing in the community that are really, really powerful. And I highly suggest you look at that. 350 Colorado volunteering and event opportunities. So below, I actually have 2 links to the website that they have. So one of them is the calendar for the events, but also the volunteering opportunities. And there are a lot. They are very good at training people as climate leaders, and they are always looking for more people to join. And then the second, where to begin, the Colorado People's Climate Justice Platform. And I just so happened to forget entering their little badge here on this screen. So I'm sorry. And the platform, it's a growing initiative to positively impact urgent climate policy related issues. It's a coalition of over 66 Colorado groups that have endorsed an initiative. Basically, hundreds of thousands of Colorado's desires for strong climate policy needs to be addressed, and a lot of these groups are joining and endorsing because it's highly important to invest in climate policy now. I mean, it is such a thing. And I think they just released the report saying that if we don't stop the world from increasing 1.5 degrees by 2030, then it is bad. And I mean, it's already increased 0.5 degree, and these hurricanes we've been having have been awful. And their website, anyways, for volunteering is peoplesplatform.info/take-action. And here is a list of other nonprofits that we have, and I thought would be important to include. And then finally, someone was in this webinar and she said that she has started a new nonprofit, or just, I think, joined a new nonprofit, and it's called Peak Alliance for a Sustainable Future. And I do have it on next week's slides. But again, it's Peak Alliance for a Sustainable Future. And it's a nonprofit in the Colorado Springs area that's focused on sustainability. So thank you. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for watching this. Thank you for being interested in climate justice. If this is the only one you can attend, thank you for just watching this. The next webinar, Pillar 2, Philanthropy, takes place next Tuesday night from 7 to 8 p.m., although that has already occurred. And then for any questions about this or future events, please email me at abigail@350colorado.org. Thank you.